the most patient serial killer that we have seen in history. With BTK, there's two big elements that stand out with him. He's a narcissistic maniac with a huge ego, and one of the most interesting parts is that he can control his desire to act on his urges. And this is what draws the attention of so many people to a person who chose to go a different way than the other 99%. His list of victims is small and is set up with attention to detail to where the man that named himself BTK, Dennis Rader, picks his victims to where they are special to him. But there's one big part in BTK's story that's just as unbelievable as what he did. It's his personal life that he had before, during, and after his murders. This is the man in the open, Dennis Rader.
Something drove me to do this. The normal people just don't do this. You can't stop it. I can't stop it. It's just, it controls me. It's like it's in the driver's seat.
Before Dennis Rader becomes BTK, looking back on his life, he shows very strong similarities to other serial killers. Even when Dennis is talking, he almost says the exact same sentences about his life, like a famous serial killer right around his time as well, Ted Bundy. Dennis and Ted Bundy start their murder spree in the same year, 1974. Even as Ted Bundy talked about his urges, this unbelievable force inside him, he knew he could not contain. Dennis says very similar things about himself. He always had urges and thoughts of controlling people, tying them up, strangling them, breaking into homes. The rush it must be. Another weird coincidence, Bundy and Dennis started murdering people around the same age as well. Ted Bundy was 27 and Dennis was 28. One of the biggest surprises is that Dennis reads detective magazines himself, just like Bundy said he did, blaming many of his early obsessions over these magazines. Dennis is a little different than most serial killers. He actually has enough control to suppress the urge inside of him, from physically harming someone and just acting out his own fantasy in his own way. And this is why he was able to evade capture for so long, unlike most serial killers. But once Dennis finds a person, he looks at them as a project, and they will no doubt be his next victim. It's just a matter of time before they come face to face with each other. Dennis, also like other serial killers before and after him, would also go down the road of hurting animals at a very young age, to where this was his private obsession as well, and kept it to himself as a child. When you really look at Dennis's life, you see that everything is connected to the obsession for him to be BTK. He's married, he has 2 children, he's a leader in the Boy Scouts, he's an electrician, going into people's homes, learning about security systems, phone lines, the ins and outs of people's homes and their activities, who's home during the day and who's home during the night, what doors are unlocked and what windows are open. It was all a part of the illusion for Dennis. It was the fact that he can be in people's homes, helping him fantasize. Dennis was also a church leader where he could control many people that were under him. Dennis's life is set up to where he's in control of many different elements, where he has power over people, and this is just all part of his fantasy world. There's no doubt that Dennis did not love his family, his wife, his 2 children, but we see this in many serial killers. The ones that have long careers living out their obsession, maintaining a job, maintaining relationships, maintaining the family. It's to help look like you're a part of the rest. But no one ever sees Dennis dip into the shadows. He's living a full life, thinking of people he wants as his victims, even taking small keepsakes from homes he breaks into, helping with his fantasies. We know that Dennis broke into his first home the same day he was let go from Cessna, the job that he loved and was proud to have. With Dennis breaking into this home just for a thrill, this would be the driving force that would lead him to his first big crime. It's now 1974, and Dennis is a full-time student and is about to add something to his life that will consume him. Dennis's first murder is so rare because he takes so much risk with simply just walking into a home with a whole family. In 1974, this is where Dennis will unveil something that's been inside of him. It's BTK that the world will have to deal with for the next 30 years. When Dennis is in court 30 years later, recounting the first crime, murdering what he thought was a whole family, even with all the time that has passed by, Dennis remembers moment by moment that he savored over the past 30 years. He's held it tight. Dennis goes on to tell the court, from the moment he walked in the home to the moment he walked out, person by person, minute by minute, conversations, even that Dennis had to let the Otero's dog outside. The case that went unsolved for 30 years is explained in just minutes by Dennis just saying he had been watching Miss Otero. He thought she would be home alone without her husband, but Dennis will say Mr. Otero just got in the way. He says that he simply just wanted to go in the house, grab Miss Otero, take her to an abandoned barn that he already had picked out and ready, and tie her up. It's unbelievable how much Dennis remembers. The father, the church leader, the husband, the friend, doesn't seem to be anywhere. Dennis has an empathetic look on his face in the courtroom, looking truly evil, not even human. Dennis says, as he's wrapping up his first murder in 1974, everything he's fantasized about, he had nearly done and completed in just a few hours with the Otero family. Dennis says from this point, now that he has tasted the reality of what he has had in his head, he's now consumed and wrapped up in his fantasy life. Dennis says he spends hours at the library, drawing images of victims and positions that he has in his mind. There's no internet, no phones, no real imagery to provide Dennis with what he's looking for, just him in his mind and what he's seen with his own two eyes. Dennis, even more so now, is thinking how he can keep going. Dennis does something that's unusual for a serial killer. How he finds victims is a process. He's not picking up hitchhikers or college girls needing a lift. He's driving around his own area and his neighborhood, just simply looking on who catches his eye, just simply looking at who catches his eye, from people outside watering their flowers to simply walking in their home. There's a reason Dennis had the knowledge and ability to break into a home and murder a whole family. In 1974, Dennis will start working for ADT Security, where he's a service installer. He's learning the ins and outs of homes around his city and around his neighborhood. He's learned how to cut power lines, but even more so, how to break into homes. The job that Dennis has is one of his biggest weapons, as he uses it to find victims. When Dennis left the Otero home, he turned the heat up on the thermostat to try to keep the bodies warm and speed up the process of decaying so he could mess up detectives and thinking maybe this would tamper with evidence. Dennis took belongings from the family home. He took a radio, also clothing from Mrs. Otero. Dennis also stayed a while, taking pictures of the Otero family, tied up and deceased. Now Dennis has physical evidence that he can use and he can see and remember. It's said that many of Dennis's pictures are even better than the police pictures. Some of his victims alive, but many already deceased. If Dennis's first murder wasn't cruel enough, it seems that he'll make the next one even crueler. But that seems to be what Dennis loves. The cruelty, the inhumaneness of not caring about people's cries. It just feeds him even more. Dennis is still living off the fumes of his last murder, still intoxicated by it. He's looking for his new project, as he says. Dennis would be driving and see his next project that he would start trolling, as he said. He starts watching the house and the person living there, which would turn out to be 21-year-old Kathryn Bright. Dennis goes from trolling to stalking Kathryn and makes his decision on April 4th, 1974 to complete his fantasy on Kathryn. That morning, Dennis will take his wife to work, passing Kathryn's home and sparking his curiosity. After Dennis drops his wife off at work, he's got the day to himself. He drives home, overwhelmed and shaking with intoxication of the thought of breaking into Kathryn's home with her being there. He makes a decision, a risky decision. He goes to Kathryn's house a little before noon, doing what he did last time, cutting the phone lines and looking around the home for an easy way in. Dennis will make his way into the home. When Dennis is in the house, he has a knife and 2 guns in his possession. He looks the house over and then simply just waits. When he hears Kathryn pull in the driveway, Dennis goes and hides in the bedroom closet. But once again, Dennis will be shocked. Kathryn shows up with her younger brother Kevin around 2 p.m. They walk into the house, completely unaware Dennis is in there waiting. As Kathryn and Kevin are in the house, Dennis comes out of the shadows and gives the same speech that he gave the Otero family. He's on the run, he needs cash, and he's not there to hurt anybody, and they just simply caught him rummaging through the house. Dennis tells Kathryn and Kevin, as he holds them at gunpoint, to go to the bedroom, telling Kevin to tie up his sister. When Kevin is done tying up his sister, it's the last time he'll ever see her alive. Dennis tells Kevin to go to the other bedroom, leaving Kathryn tied up and waiting. With Dennis and Kevin in the other bedroom, Dennis starts to tie up Kevin, but all of a sudden, Kevin starts fighting Dennis, almost knocking the gun away from Dennis himself. But Dennis is bigger and stronger and overpowers Kevin. Dennis will end up firing his .22 twice at Kevin, hitting him in the head. Kevin falls to the ground, blacking out. Dennis simply gets up, doesn't tie Kevin up, thinking he's deceased, and goes back to the bedroom with Kathy. Dennis immediately tries to strangle Kathy, but she puts up a fight, he says. Dennis will have to do something he really does not want to do, and really just ruins the process for him. He has to start stabbing Kathy. With all this happening, the murder is being botched. The excitement, the process, it's not going how Dennis wanted it. He's frustrated, and unbelievably, Kevin, who has been shot twice, will get up and run to the door. The last time Dennis sees Kevin, he's running down the road, screaming for help. Dennis goes through the house fast, cleans what he can of his tracks, making sure he leaves nothing behind of his, and walks calmly out of the house, disappearing into the neighborhood. When police arrive, Kathryn will be taken to the hospital. Blood transfusions will be done, but she will pass away from knife wounds from under her rib cage from Dennis. Dennis will make it back to his car and drive back to his home, cleaning up and then going back to pick up his wife from work later that day, and then simply driving back home with her, talking about her day, making dinner, and having a nice night together, like nothing ever happened. The husband, the church leader, the friend, soon-to-be father, is just getting started in the sickness of BTK, as he will go on to murder many more people around his town and his neighborhood.
We have an individual who apparently has the uncontrollable desire to kill at times. But very honestly, we have no solid leads at all.